Welcome back to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede, and while most of the attention has been focused on the governor's race, the other cabinet posts are also up for grabs, and perhaps none is as important as the position of Attorney General. The current Attorney General, Republican Pam Bondi, has raised more than $4 million and is ahead in the polls. Her challenger is Democrat George Sheldon, who served as Secretary for the Department of Children and Families under Governor Charlie Crist. And George Sheldon is here with us in studio. George, thank you for coming in.
It's good to be here.
Now, let me put up front, we wanted to get Pam Bondi to come in. She declined. We couldn't even get Pam Bondi to come in on her own. It seems like she's just avoiding South Florida entirely and not even campaigning down here.
Well, she is avoiding South Florida. It's not her strength. But she's
Although the last time I checked, she was the Attorney General for the entire state.
That's exactly right. But the bottom line is she's also not going many other places. I mean, she's not doing editorial board interviews. I've accepted 5 debates. She did 1, and it was limited to a subscription, by subscription only in Tampa. She wouldn't debate in front of the Orange County Bar, which has been historically doing Attorney General debates. So it's a dynamic. I think she basically feels that if I get onto the tube, do a few ads, that I don't have to worry about this.
Well, let's turn to, so where do you see as the major issues that define you as compared to her? Why should people be voting for you?
Well, I was Deputy Attorney General to Bob Butterworth. I know what that office can do. Under Bob Butterworth, and I think other Attorneys General, dating back to Richard Irvin all the way through Bill McCollum, have intervened, for instance, in utility rate increases, not this Attorney General. Every Attorney General has put an emphasis on Medicaid fraud. South Florida, Palm Beach, Broward-Dade, is probably 3rd in the country in terms of Medicaid fraud by providers. There ought to be attention in that area. She didn't even visit the Miami office for 10 months. There were 23 vacancies in Medicaid fraud, even a year into her administration. That office ought to be on the forefront of protecting the consumer. What she has chosen to do is really make political statements, intervening in the Supreme Court to prevent certain contraceptives for employer-paid policies for women, intervening in every same-sex marriage case in Florida after 38 federal and state courts have declared those bans unconstitutional.
If you were Attorney General, if you were elected Attorney General, what would you do as it relates to the same-sex marriage case?
Well, first of all, I would drop the appeals. And I did that in the gay adoption case when I was Secretary of the Department of Children and Families. After an appellate court made a decision, we decided not to appeal to the Florida Supreme Court, and frankly, there's been no backlash. What I've seen is that gays and lesbians were successfully fostering children and without any allegations of abuse or neglect, as we've had, for instance, with heterosexual families. Bottom line is I would drop the appeals. For all practical purposes, this is settled case law, and we need to move on.
Now, I do want to ask you, I pointed out as well, that you were head of the Department of Children and Families under Charlie Crist. Now, that is an agency that has been severely troubled. Could people not draw a conclusion that since you were in charge of that agency when there were a number of child deaths, that should be attributable to you as well? What responsibility do you take for the mismanagement and mishandling in DCF?
Well, when I left office, even Rick Scott's transition committee said it was the best run agency in state government. It was at a time when we had record adoptions, the highest number of adoptions in the state, getting children into a permanent setting. It was a time when we reduced the number of children in out-of-home care safely. Regrettably, no matter how good children and families gets, we can't save every dysfunctional family. That's a regrettable situation, but we've got to try to do that. That's got to be our goal. Child fatalities went up and they went down while I was Secretary. They've gone up and they've gone down under Rick Scott. And my view was that when you have a child death, you need to be as transparent as possible. So we made the decision early on that if something bad happened, we would open up the records, let the full light of the public shine on it. That's the only way you're going to improve the system.
George, I want to appreciate your coming in. Obviously, early voting has already been underway, absentee voting going on, and the election is Tuesday, November 4th. George, thank you for coming in.
Jim, thanks.
All right, take care.
Good to see you.